are so delighted to welcome back Micah Simons, who is a rabbinical student at the Jewish Theological Seminary in his second year, pursuing the rabbinate on account of his desire to sustain Jewish community and the complexity of its traditions and practices. Micah currently serves as the Slifka Nadish Fellow at Cornell University Hillel, and prior to his studies at JTS, Micah studied at the conservative yeshiva in Israel, as well as Hadar Summer Beit Midrash. We're just so honored to get to host Micah as part of the JTS Ambassador Program, deepening our ties to the seminary, and the ability to learn from Micah, who I know was warmly welcomed last month, and we're so happy you're here again.
So I think I found it. I think I finally found it. I found a practice that we do today exactly as written in the Torah. Left largely untouched by the enormity of Jewish literature, our only source for the ritual is the Torah itself. It's not found in the Mishnah, not in the Talmud, the writings of Maimonides or Joseph Caro, nowhere. Only in our Parsha this week. Now, you may be combing your heads, running through the various areas of Jewish law and practice, trying to come up with what might be so easily and readily transmissible. Something about Shabbat? Definitely not. Damages inflicted by a goring ox? Unlikely. Damages inflicted by a non-goring ox? Less likely. Kashrut? What, are you kidding me? Maybe it's something more niche, more obscure, something like Pidyon Haben, redeeming our firstborns from priestly service, or Shiluach Haken, shooing a mother bird before claiming her eggs. No, it's something so plain, so obvious, so regular, we barely think about it, even when it happens. In Parshat Vayechi, we say goodbye to Yaakov, the last of our initial patriarchs. Yaakov is the one who wrestled with an angel, labored 14 years to marry the love of his life, Rachel, lost, then reconnected with his favorite son, Yosef, fathered Yosef's 11 other brothers, granting us 12 ancestral tribes, not to mention his sister Dinah, and received for our people the very name Israel. Before Yaakov dies, however, he manages the strength for a goodbye tour of sorts, offering blessings to each of his 12 sons. Again, sorry, Dinah. That bear some truth as to who each of the sons' descendant tribes will become. But before he gets to his sons, Yaakov first starts with his grandsons, that is, those of his favorite son, Yosef. As he blesses his grandchildren, Manasseh and Ephraim, reversing the order of their birthright, perhaps as an homage to the ways in which he tricked his own father and his own brother into switching the order of their birthright. We read, Veivarchem bayom hahu, so he blessed them on that day, lemor, saying, Becha yivarech Yisrael lemor, by you shall Israel give blessings, saying, Yisimcha Elohim ke Ephraim uche God make you like Ephraim and like Manasseh. V'yasem et Ephraim lifnei Manasseh. Thus he made Ephraim go before Manasseh. It is a ritual so commonplace, so widespread, that as I read, I'd bet that at least some in the room were mumbling the words alongside me. It is a blessing Jewish parents have given their children since that very day, Bayom Hahu, and persists until now. The words are heard on Shabbat in Jewish households around the world, crossing denominational dividing lines, diasporic identity markers, and even gender, as we now have a fitting equivalent blessing for daughters. Yisimech Elohim kesara kerivka kerachel uchelea. God make you like Sarah, like Rivka, like Rachel, and like Leah. Going back to my initial findings, or lack thereof, how is it that this blessing of all those offered in the Torah has persisted through time without so much as a mention in the various codes of Jewish law? Two theories abound. The first, that Jews bless their children according to Ephraim and Manasseh because they are the first brothers in our collective story who don't quarrel. Cain and Abel Yitzchak and Yishmael, Yaakov and Esav, Yosef and his brothers. These are accounts depicting sibling rivalries. No such story exists for Ephraim and for Manasseh. It is therefore a blessing of shalom bayit and of brotherly love. The second gives a sense that we are deserving of this blessing of Ephraim and Manasseh because they were born to Yosef outside of Eretz Israel, the land of Israel. Thus, they did not have the kind of Jewish environment around them to bind them to family and to help them cling to God and to Torah. It becomes a blessing of Jewish continuity in a world whose majority is not Jewish. The problem is, I find neither of these explanations particularly convincing. Outside of Sefer Bereshit, which we conclude this Shabbat, we never again hear about the lives of Ephraim and Manasseh, only their descendants. How should we know what their relationship was like? And sure, these boys were born in Egypt, yet Joseph was as Egyptian as an Egyptian could be. I struggle to see him maintaining a connection to the house and God of his father when he was forcibly removed from the former and never spoken to by the latter. About this blessing, Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, a 19th century German rabbi influential in the emergence of modern Orthodoxy, commented on this tradition. On that day, the bracha was pronounced for the first time, the blessing which since then has lived on the lips of all Jewish parents when they bless their children. Becha yivarech. Your children will be so blessed that when fathers in Israel wish to bless their children, they can know of no higher blessing than to wish, may God let thee be even as Ephraim and Manasseh. So what is so lofty about this blessing? I believe it to be the very relationship encoded between parents and children. These boys have witnessed their father reignite a relationship with their uncles after they committed the most horrific crime against him when he was but a teenager. Not only was their offense forgiven, but actually the 12 brothers continue life together beyond the death of Jacob. The 11 are even with Joseph at the moment of his passing, promising him that his bones will be returned to Eretz Israel, to be fulfilled later on by Moshe and the tribal descendants of these 12 brothers. Ephraim and Manasseh thus are witness to a new paradigm of Jewish living where the individual harmonizes into the collective. The brothers are no longer portrayed as their individual selves, but now clans that make up tribes, that make up the collective of Bnei Yisrael. And so this blessing comes to hold a prominent place in our understanding of Jewish peoplehood. There is no impetus from the Talmud or from the Mishnah Torah to bless our kids with these exact words. We are in no sense obligated to use this particular formulation to bless our children. And yet we do anyway, in the same way, for thousands of years. The blessing that we should be like Ephraim and Manasseh is the blessing that we love Jewish peoplehood and practice and history and ritual. In our postmodernist, individualistic society, there is no obligation strong enough to force us to commit to continuing the ways of our ancestors, Yosef and Yaakov, Sarah and Rivka, Abraham and Yitzchak, Rachel and Leah. So too, there is no obligation committing us to specifically use the blessing of Ephraim and Manasseh, and yet without fail, we do. So too, may we continue to participate in community and to build beautiful Shabbat observances and daven